So, hi everybody. My name is Everest Nevraumont. And today I want to start with a show of hands. If you know the answer, raise your hand and yell the answer out. So, who can tell me who the 20th president was? Well, those are my siblings, so they don't count. Well, you heard them, so that also doesn't count. Well, anyway, y'all are right. It is Garfield. And Garfield was assassinated by Charles Guiteau. And, well, technically he was assassinated by Dr. Bliss, who wouldn't listen to Dr. Lister about washing hands. So technically, the bacteria from Dr. Bliss's hands killed him. So after Garfield's assassination, his vice president, Chester Arthur, became the 21st president and signed the Pendleton Act, eliminating the spoils system in Garfield's honor. Now, wouldn't it be cool if you knew all of that? And not only that, but those stories about all the other presidents and the vice presidents? Or what if you knew all the Chinese dynasties? Or all the Mughal emperors, the most important artists, composers, and scientists? Or all the biggest wars and those wars' most important battles? It sounds impossible. Somebody must need photographic memory to be able to remember all that, right? Well, you don't. 9 months ago, I was interested in history, but I couldn't tell you the difference between a Rockefeller and a Rockwell. Or Queen Victoria and Victoria's Secret. Or Plato, and well, Plato. Well, now I know all of that and more. Last week, I put my history knowledge to the test when I competed in the National History Bowl Championships, where I placed second in the country, which is the best finish for a girl in history. Okay, but today I am not going to teach you history. I know, sad. But instead, I will teach you how to learn. So that way, you could learn anything. Like you could learn all the elements on the periodic table, or all the highest countries by GDP, or you could learn history if you want to. But how exactly do you learn? People have been trying to figure that out for centuries, well, thousands of years, millennia, really. And the techniques I use come from practices that have worked throughout history, plus a little modern technology. Now, a lot of people are scared of new technology. They think things like AI will take their jobs. But I'm not scared, because I don't have a job. Also, because I use technology to turbocharge my learning. So most people think of technology as fancy new things, like computers and flying cars. But actually, I think technology is just tools that humans have invented to make their lives easier. Instead of being called technologies, they could just be called tools. Writing was a tool. The plow was a tool. And I think the first and oldest tool to help improve memory was storytelling. Humans remember stories so much better than random facts. That's why when I learn history, I don't just learn the facts. I learn the stories. And to kind of get you an idea for how that works, we are going to do a little experiment. So, do you think you can help me with this? Yes. What's your name? Evan. So, all we're going to do is I'm going to say some letters, and you're going to repeat them back. Do you have good memory? All right, so you're going to repeat them back, okay? It's only like 21 letters, so you ready? IKNOWALLTHEPRSIDNTS. Got that all?
One more time.
Okay. IKNOWALLTHEPRSIDNTS. Well, you gotta spell the words. You gotta say the letters. You were actually really close. So, the fact that you remembered more than 7 is pretty amazing, because our brains are only designed for remembering about 7 things in our short-term memory. And you remembered like 10. So, but what if instead of remembering that, I bet this one will be a lot easier for you. I know all the presidents. Could you read that back?
Yes, I know all the presidents.
Good job. So the same thing we just did here, I do with people's stories. I don't learn random facts about Napoleon, like how he lost at Waterloo. I learned Napoleon's first loss, which, by the way, is surprising. After a treaty was signed, he held a rabbit hunt for all of his men. But somebody screwed up, and the rabbits were tame. They weren't wild. So instead of running away, the rabbits charged him, and he suffered his first defeat by bunnies. So now, we move on to our next tool of the memory palace. The memory palace was invented by the Greek poet Simonides in the year 500 BC. And ironically, nobody remembers what the creator of the memory palace looked like. So, like I said before, our brains are not designed for remembering facts or words or numbers, but they are designed for remembering locations and images. And I use this to my advantage here. I create wacky images of all the presidents in order throughout my house, which is how I can remember them all and their numbers. For example, Garfield is a genie in my room granting wishes. Grant is a genie in my room granting wishes. I know, a little creepy. Ronald Reagan is firing ray guns in the pool down the street. And Thomas Jefferson is in the shower getting soaked. And it's really cold water, too. That's why his vice president, Aaron Burr, is so cold. But memory palaces don't just help with the presidents. I also use them for the Chinese dynasties. The Song dynasty is in my kitchen with the YMCA. And you know what the YMCA is singing? Yamen, as in the Battle of Yamen, when the Song dynasty fell to the Mongols. Memory palaces can be anywhere and help you remember anything. But we aren't done. Now we're moving on to the next technology of flashcards. If reading is fun for most of you, but when you're reading, you're probably not reading to learn. Your brain isn't making the connections you need to actually remember something, which is why when I read, I create flashcards on what I'm reading so I can remember it. Over the last 9 months, I've created over 7,000 flashcards, and I can't review 7,000 flashcards every single day. So the next technology I need is something to help me figure out which cards to do on which days. And the initial attempts to solve this problem happened in the 1800s when Hermann Ebbinghaus tested himself on how long he could remember different syllables. He created the first forgetting curves. Then, in the 1970s, Sebastian Leitner invented the 5-box method for flashcards. If you got a card right, you moved it into a box you reviewed less often. If you got a card wrong, you moved it into a box you reviewed more often. Still better than trying to do 7,000 cards every single day, but there's still a lot of cards to do. But now we have digital technology that can help figure out which cards to do on which days. And the one I use is called Anki. Every time Anki thinks I have a 10% chance of forgetting something, it brings the card back. Its just-in-time flashcards helps me maximize the number of things I can know in the minimum amount of time. So now we move on to the last and final technology, the one I know you all have been waiting for. The technology of AI, artificial intelligence. Almost as important as figuring out how to learn is figuring out what to learn. In a different context, this is what Donald Rumsfeld called his unknown unknowns. Since the history bee gives you study guides for regionals, but doesn't give you any for nationals. So for nationals, I'm pretty much on my own. They can almost ask you anything. Well, not anything. They won't ask what George Washington's favorite color was. It was green, by the way. Though they won't ask that, that does help me remember that he lived in Mount Vernon, which is Latin for green. So, if the history bee won't tell me what to study, how will AI help? Well, my dad has plugged in all the old history bee questions into AI and asked it what are the most important things to study. And it wasn't perfect. We ended up studying people like Bukasa, the brutal dictator of the Central African Republic that almost nobody has heard of. But it was pretty helpful also. I ended up getting people that I probably wouldn't have gotten if I hadn't been told to study that. For example, Margaret Sanger, who founded Planned Parenthood. Or Langston Hughes, who was a poet during the Harlem Renaissance. Or Edward the Black Prince, who was a brilliant general during the 100 Years' War, but nobody's ever heard of him because he died of dysentery. Oops. So every time I learn a new person, place, or event, I put them in a memory palace. I create flashcards and I review them with spaced repetition. But before I do anything like that, I go back and I learn their stories. And my story this year ended with the best finish for a 4th grade girl in the National History Bee. But my story is not done. Next year, I won't have the best finish for a 5th grade girl. I will have the best finish for a 5th grader. Period. So now that you guys have learned how to learn, go out there and make history.